What do you mean, like crazy?
Like they're in a chair locked with their wrists and stuff.
That's not a movie.
That's a straight jacket.
Like the movie Split?
Yeah.
I've seen that.
Yeah.
Mixed personalities.
Yeah, multiple personality disorder. Well, when you were thinking about your answers, I bet somebody like Janet Jackson or Alicia Keys didn't come to mind.
Yeah.
I bet you didn't know that they struggled with a previous mental illness. That's because they were too scared to talk about it due to our world's stigma associated with mental illness, especially in the African American community. In fact, African Americans are 20% more likely to experience mental health problems than the general population. Not only are African Americans more vulnerable to mental illness, but we tend to ignore and forget that mental illness is a real problem. Because of the lack of education towards this topic and the negative way social media portrays a mental disorder, it is hard to tell someone when you're really struggling inside. For example, some people mistake a mental disorder for a sign of weakness. When I finally stirred up the courage to tell somebody that I was struggling, they responded with, "It's a part of life. Just get over it."
Around them.
What do you mean, like crazy?
Like they're in a chair locked with their wrists and stuff.
That's not a movie. That's a straight jacket.
Like the movie Split?
Yeah.
I've seen that.
Yeah.
Mixed personalities.
Yeah, multiple personality disorder. Well, when you were thinking about your answers, I bet somebody like Janet Jackson or Alicia Keys didn't come to mind.
Yeah.
I bet you didn't know that they struggled with a previous mental illness. That's because they were too scared to talk about it due to our world's stigma associated with mental illness, especially in the African American community. In fact, African Americans are 20% more likely to experience mental health problems than the general population. Not only are African Americans more vulnerable to mental illness, but we tend to ignore and forget that mental illness is a real problem. Because of the lack of education towards this topic and the negative way social media portrays a mental disorder, it is hard to tell someone when you're really struggling inside. For example, some people mistake a mental disorder for a sign of weakness. When I finally stirred up the courage to tell somebody that I was struggling, they responded with, "It's a part of life. Just get over it." With this response, I felt hopeless and embarrassed that I just poured out my heart just to be told that it's a part of growing up. All my life, I've grown up in an environment where mental illness is a personal flaw, which can never be overcome. But I'm standing in front of you telling you that with the proper resources and support, it can be overcome. Just like my opening question, you guys saw mental illness as a threat when it is no different from a physical injury. Matter of fact, our brains are the most important organs in our bodies. It can get sick just like our hearts, lungs, and livers. Not only that, you can recover from a mental health condition and lead a healthy life. So the true shame isn't in having a mental disorder, it's avoiding the treatment you need to live a good life. Mental illness has been around for decades and decades, but not enough people have really spoken about it until now. Too often, mental disorders like PTSD, anxiety, and depression were never really mentioned. Hundreds of years ago, when someone was battling a serious mental condition, they were either locked up or put to death. The only thing people had to turn to was their faith in God. Fast forward to the present day, our culture is still relevant, and we do the same as our ancestors, which is pray about it, or give it up to God. But you wouldn't tell someone with cancer, diabetes, or a heart problem just to pray about it. You would probably say, you need to go see a doctor. But when it comes to mental health in the African American community, there's little compassion or empathy. Don't get me wrong, praying for recovery from mental illness is pretty good, but we still have to be proactive. We can't pray away a mental disorder. We have to get help, and I'm living proof of that. Now we have Audrey talking about common mental health disorders.
Hi, I'm Audrey Smith, and I will be talking about common mental illnesses. Approximately 1 in 5 teens experience a severe mental disorder. Half of all mental conditions start by age 14, but most causes are undetected and untreated. The first mental illness I would like to talk to you about is suicide, when a person kills themselves. In the past few years, suicide has been a constant topic in the media, and the rates of suicide are rising. For example, the carbon monoxide poisoning of an 18-year-old boy in his car to the TV show 13 Reasons Why, which prompted many people to die by suicide in the same way as Hannah Baker did on the show. Also, the Blue Whale Challenge influenced many teens to play a game that ultimately ended in suicide. Many different factors contribute to suicide, including depression and loss of connections with others. I'm going to talk to you about a man, Kevin Hines, who jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge and survived to tell us about his rehabilitation story. He has inspired many people to get help. Here are a few comments he made on his video in his video on YouTube. The millisecond my hands left the rail, it was an instant regret. It's okay not to be okay. It's not okay not to have someone to back you up, he said. Recovery happens. I'm living through. I will now be talking about depression. Many people think depression is just sadness, but it is not. It is a constant state of a person losing hope, being sad, fatigued, not caring anymore, losing interest in doing things they used to enjoy, and much, much more. People can't just get over it. They're not faking. Depression can be treated through counseling and using antidepressant medicines. People with depression have to struggle to find coping solutions, but there are effective ways to treat depression and help people recover. The next one I would like to talk about is anxiety. It is one of the most common mental illnesses. A cause of normal anxiety that we can all relate to is schoolwork. However, having worries that stay with you about many different things that you cannot control, along with other physical symptoms for over half a year, could be symptoms of clinical anxiety. Counseling and medication made for anxiety can help people recover from this. The next mental illness I will be talking to you about is eating disorders, such as anorexia and bulimia. People with anorexia do not eat enough and end up losing a dangerous amount of weight. People with bulimia binge on large amounts of food, and then force themselves to throw up so they won't gain weight. Therapy can help people with eating disorders to combat their urges to stay thin and learn more healthy ways of eating. I hope you learned some facts about common mental illnesses. I will be handing it over to Kendall, and she will be talking to you about coping solutions that can help anyone's mental health.
Okay, so my name is Kendall Cooper, and I'm here to talk to you about the coping skills to help mental health. Coping skills are strategies to help people cope with everyday life and any mental illness they may have. Coping skills don't necessarily get rid of a mental illness, but they help in the long term. Coping skills can include in your daily routine or on your really bad days. Some coping skills for depression would be to listen to music or talk to someone who really cheers you up. For anxiety, take deep breaths, take baths, or even do something you really enjoy. Or even when having an anxiety attack, close your eyes or even picture your happy place. Some people even get to the point where coping skills don't really work for them. So they talk to someone they really trust, like a teacher, friend, family member, or even their school counselor. Coping skills are choices and habits. It can be helpful to use these coping skills regularly. The more you use coping skills, the better they'll work for you in overcoming your difficulties and your mental health. Alicia Keys uses meditation to cope with her mental illness. Kim Kardashian has anxiety, and she talks to a therapist to cope with her problems that she faces in her life. Janet Jackson has faced depression, and she copes with her mental illness by talking to friends and family who support her and she loves and enjoys. Coping skills can be anything we do to make us feel content, calm, and avoid stress. For example, I might call my best friends Audrey and Mackenzie for some laughs or self-reflect in my journal. I know, writing is very boring, but if you really feel uncomfortable with expressing your feelings with an actual person, you may want to write it all down in a journal just to relieve yourself from that built-up stress or anger. Anything that I do is make and use my stress ball, which we will do later after the panel. What are some coping skills that you think would be effective for someone who has a mental illness? Anybody have anything? Any coping skills you think that it would help someone?
That's a good one. Like squishies.
Like stress balls?
Squishies.
Those don't get it. In fact, there's something called CBT. CBT is cognitive behavioral therapy. This type of therapy focuses on making connections between thoughts, behavior, and feelings. This type of therapy can be effective in treating a wide range of issues including eating disorders, abuse, anxiety, and depression. CBT helps to break down the teen a way thinks or how they behave that keeps them in a bad state of mind. As teens, if we think we are too shy, we might challenge ourselves to make conversation with new people. Also, if we tell ourselves that we are lame and people don't actually like us, a therapist can help us develop ways to tell ourselves that everyone is different in their unique way and there's nothing wrong about that. The benefit of CBT is that it is short term and that it is also very problem focused, which means it deals with issues in the present. It also improves communication skills with others, reduces fear, and improves self-esteem, and many other helpful things. Many therapists use cognitive behavioral therapy with teens. CBT includes giving targeted homework assignments to help people directly address areas in their life where they need better coping skills. Thank you for all listening to our speeches about mental health. It is now time for our expert panel to answer any questions you may have. Remember, the index card you got, please write down an anonymous question on the card that you would like for the panel to answer. They will get to as many questions as they can. It is my pleasure to introduce our panel members. Ms. Tracy Patterson is the Director of Marketing and Public Relations at the Pelton Children's Center and specializes in nonprofit mental health communications. Ms. Patterson is also our mentor for the Middle School in Mind project. Dr. Robin Gearing is a professor in social work at the University of Houston and is a well-known expert on suicide and participation in mental health treatment. Ms. Lauren Persley is a training specialist for Mental Health America of Greater Houston, who teaches about the importance of destigmatizing mental health. Please join me in thanking them for being with us today.
Okay, my question is, if your friend tells you she wants to kill herself, what should you do? That's a very good question. The first thing is, you should not feel responsible for taking care of your friend's needs, but you can still take care of your friend. Some of the things that you can do is to ask your friend how he or she is feeling, and you can have the conversation and you can ask them directly, do you want to die? Because that is not something that will trigger the person to want to kill themselves. It will start to create the conversation for you to talk to them about trusted people in their lives that they can talk to about how they're feeling. And if they need you to be a support to them and go with them to talk to maybe a teacher or a pastor or especially a parent, that's what role you get to play. You never ever have to take the responsibility on yourself of caring for somebody else's mental health in that way.
Absolutely. And something that I like to train students in is a 3-step process called ACT. It's something that any student can do. The A stands for acknowledge. Acknowledge things that you're seeing different with your friend. Hey, I noticed that this has changed with you. Then you want to care. You want to express your concern and that you care about this person and that you want to see them get better. So that you're going to then tell an adult, tell a trusted adult that you care about. That is how I usually instruct young people to help a friend who is suicidal, because as Tracy was saying, it is not our jobs as students or as young people to help treat mental illness. It's definitely important that we refer that person to somebody who can treat mental illness. So acknowledge that you're seeing something different, express that you care about them, and then go tell a trusted adult. Sometimes you want to take that person with you, but it really depends on the situation.
I would agree with the comments that everyone else had shared. I guess 2 things is, it's common. Lots of young people think of suicide. How many people here are the only child in their family? Usually it's 21% of children now. How many people do you think when they're 16 would like to have a driver's license?
Wait, what?
when you're 16, want to have a driver's license? There you go. In the US, currently, 24% of 16-year-olds have a driver's license. More people think of suicide and have a driver's license at 16. So it's not uncommon. So first of all, there's a difference between thinking about it and doing something. So partly you should recognize that we're human, and that might be a human thought. And this is something that can be readily addressed. It's readily treatable and it's readily addressed, but it does require some specific skill set. It is not for young people, it is not for those who aren't skilled to deal with, but you take them to your guidance counselor, ask them to talk to a teacher, talk to a parent. Please don't keep it a secret. If you're a friend, you care more about their safety than the relationship. It's okay to talk to an adult and they can help.
Okay, one from the list. What mental illness affects teen the most and why?
Anxiety will affect about 11% of young teens, which is, anyone left-handed here? 10% people. So more people have anxiety than left-handed when they're youth. For moods, it's around 8 to 10%. And that's diagnosable. If it's major symptoms that are concerning, it can rise as high as 1 in 5, 1 in 3. So anxiety and depression are the biggest two, and that's underlining that is often is suicide.
Question, does the mental illness that causes you not to eat food cause you not to drink water? It's actually a really good question. Some people with different mental illnesses, depression, anxiety, for example, will have changes in their appetite. And we say changes because sometimes people eat more or eat less. Now, I believe the question here is talking about eating disorder. Does the mental illness that causes you not to eat food cause you not to drink water? We're talking about anorexia. It can depend on the person, I think. Sometimes people drink a lot more water when they have anorexia so that they feel full. So it just depends on the person. Tracy, your doctor, do you have any additional?
No, it won't affect your water intake at all. But I agree, they'll more likely to drink more of it just to feel full.
See, I think I'm gonna read this right. Would you cry if your patient you were helping died by suicide? I think that's the question. And I don't treat patients, so I'll have to share that with the doctor.
It is devastating when a client ends their life. It is devastating for the family, it's devastating for the doctors and the psychiatrists, and the social workers and the nurses and the parents. Yeah, it is. I've never known anyone to go through it. I've worked in hospitals and clinics where these things occurred. It is profoundly affecting. And it's also profoundly affecting because we know that we can help any young person get to a better place.
Absolutely, and I used to see clients. I used to work at a place that treated mentally ill clients, and they lived there, and it was 18 and up. And I have lost 2 clients to suicide, and I will definitely answer honestly, yes, I cried. Because it is incredibly sad, and I still think about those clients on a daily basis.
And I'll kind of share my experience as well. Although I don't see clients, I do have the opportunity to talk to people about their experiences so that I can tell their stories to others in order to help them get help or even have a different understanding of what a mental illness looks like. And in my experience, I have had a couple of people that did die by suicide. And it was devastating, and it's something that did hurt. And it's a feeling that lasts with you for a while, but it is something that you can get through. And it was really important at the time for me to know that I had a support system of people that I could talk to about that and not hold those feelings in. Because there were times where I would just sit and all of a sudden I might think about something that reminded me of them, and the tears would just start to flow. It may not be just a screaming cry, but I would still have the emotion behind the loss.
This is going to be mostly for you. Are you a specialist in treating specific mental illness?
Yeah, young people with more serious mental illnesses. Young people who are very suicidal, do a lot of self-harming, serious depressions, psychosis, bipolar disorders.
And while I used to work with clients, I was never a specialist. I was what you call a case manager. So I would work with all different kinds of clients with all different kinds of needs.
What if a family member tells you they're going to kill themselves?
No one tells you something for you to keep it a secret. Now, they might say to you, this is between you and me, or this is because I trust you, or we have a special relationship. But I want you to be really honest. They're telling you because they're afraid to bring it to an adult. They want help, and they're hoping you will be the vehicle to get that help for them. If someone tells you they're suicidal, I'm glad that they feel they're able to tell you. And if you want to do any goodness to them, bring it to an adult. They might be mad at you, but that's why they're telling you.
Can I just echo what he said?
Well, there's another thing that you can also do. If you're just unsure about where to get started and you're not quite ready to share maybe who your name or anything about you, and you just want your friend to get help and you want to know what you can do, there is a hotline that you can call. And I know all of you have your phones. Okay, when you get home, look at your phones. There is a hotline that is an easy number to remember. It is 1-800-273-TALK. And if you also Google or however you're searching online for different information about mental health or suicide, that number will come up. I think it's helpful, and I tell the people that I have worked with and people that I talk to in different types of speeches like this, to plug that into your phone, because you never know who you may meet. It may be someone that is not a family member. You may meet them in the grocery store. You find people in the strangest places who are not always so happy, and they sometimes feel the need to say, I want to kill myself. And if that happens, you have that resource. It's free. You can do it by chat. You can do text. They have several different ways that you can work with them. And even some of the social media, they have accounts where you can go in, and if somebody is saying that they're suicidal or mentioning things like they may harm themselves, you can connect directly with Facebook or Instagram or whatever you're using, because I know that's for the old people now. You can check it out on social media and start that conversation there too.
Looking for the cookies.
Yeah.
No cookies in there?
No cookies in this one.
What would be a good way to talk to someone about their problems?
I mean, I think a good place to start is, if we're talking about your problems, is just having an open conversation of, I have been feeling like this. And this is different. And it's important to talk about how long has this been going on. It's important to start with talking about how is it affecting your day-to-day life? How is it affecting school? How is it affecting your hobbies? I used to love to play Fortnite, but now I just can't stand it. I just don't have the energy to do it. Things like that. And bringing in concrete examples can really help people understand what you're going through. Sometimes when we say, I feel sad, people are like, oh, well, you'll get over it. It's like, I feel like like, I can't stop crying and I can't wake up in the morning and I don't want to do the things I like doing. Those are really concrete answers to help people understand what it feels like. And that can be a really good starting place.
If this is a close friend, sometimes these are hard conversations to have because they're a friend. And you normally don't have those with friends, you have them with other people. And it's okay to say, you know what, this is a little awkward, but I'm a little worried and concerned. And I just wanted to check in with you and see if you're doing okay. And a lot of people, not being okay isn't abnormal, it's human. That's the way we all are. We all experience difficulties at one time or other. And if you can let a friend know that you care, even if it's awkward, say, I know this may sound really lame, but I'm just worried.
What would happen if you have mental illness? You know, it really depends on the mental illness. A lot of mental illnesses have common signs and symptoms. But for the most part, a lot of mental illness is incredibly treatable. 90% of mental illnesses are treatable. So it really just depends on the different diagnosis and where you go and get help. I think that's the big thing. The sooner somebody notices something that's different, and the sooner they go and get help, whatever that is, whether that's talking to a trusted adult, going to a doctor, what have you, the more likely they are to have a positive outcome.
What's it like not to have a mental illness? There's really not that much difference in it. So depending on the research you look at, up to 46% of adults in their lifetimes at some point will have a mental disorder. That's almost half. So what do they feel? Same thing you and I do. Or there is no difference between someone with a mental illness and someone with not. What does somebody who has diabetes do? They manage it. What does somebody, if they have asthma, they manage it. And then they go on to have good and healthy lives if they get it treated. The unfortunate part is most don't. And if you're a minority, very few do.
Excuse me. I think also, to answer the question in a little different way, if you have a mental illness, do you think that you would be shunned? People not talk to you anymore? It's about the way you think about getting help. And one of the most important things is to get help. Things will happen to you negatively more often if you don't get help, if you don't get treatment. Some of the treatment can consist, again, of talking to a therapist. It could sometimes mean that you may have to take a little medication. It may mean that you have to do both. I know that there are a lot of kids that you may know that have ADHD. That's considered a mental health concern. How many of you think that there's something wrong with that person and that they'll never be healed? That's not true either. So thinking about mental illness is not necessarily the negative. It's not what you see on TV a lot of times when you see, oh, somebody's scary, they're killers, they're going to hurt someone. That's not what really happens. In fact, people with mental illness, a lot of times they just want to be by themselves, leave me alone kind of feeling, that kind of an attitude. And many times it's other people who bother them, sometimes provoking into doing other things. That's very, very uncommon. You don't hear stories about people who have mental health concerns until it's something that's bad that happens. And most of the time, that's not even an issue where it's been proven. People just automatically assume that the person has a mental illness because they've done something wrong. So don't always jump to conclusions about what mental illness looks like. I would recommend reading information from credible sources that are health sources, and if you need help with that kind of research and information. Talk to a counselor at your school, because it would be a shame for you to have feelings and emotions and not be treated, not have any help, because sometimes it is something that someone else can help you get through. Sometimes it is an issue that may be environmental or something that's very easily solved that you don't see the result or the end result of it. So it also helps to make sure that you have somebody else in your business.
Does every mental illness have a different type of treatment to help recovery?
Most. There's a lot of similarities between certain mental illnesses, because the mechanisms underlying it have some similarity. Some anxieties have some similarities to them, so you'll find that the medications or the type of talk therapy are very similar, slightly modified, but it's also modified for age of the person. The approach we take with somebody who is 14 or 12 is different than someone who is old like me. So different conditions have different approaches, but there are some similarities between them.
And I would echo that. There are different similarities, and the great thing to know is that there are so many different types of medications and therapies and combinations thereof, that if a certain treatment doesn't work for somebody for some reason, there are so many different things that we can try now. That wasn't the case 20, 30 years ago. But because there's been research and because there's been studies in mental health, it is far more treatable now than it has ever been. And that's really important for us to realize. It's also really important to know that sometimes things take time to start working, and so it's important to give that time to take effect. And always be talking to whoever you're working with about your treatment and how you feel while you're doing it.
And as young ladies, it's very important that you keep up with your bodies, keep up with your minds, talk to your medical professions, your doctors, to make sure that everything is okay with you. If you're feeling sad, if you're feeling bad, your doctor is the first person who can start connecting you to care. They're the first person that you can make sure that they check you for physical, make sure that there's nothing going on in your body, in your head, that may be causing some of the feelings that you're having. So again, check with your doctor.
All right, what are some other ways to deal with depression? Obviously, like we've been talking about, it's really good to talk to your counselors and your doctors, but like they were talking about with coping mechanism, it's really important to understand things that you can do to make you feel better. Each and every one of us has a way to self-soothe, is what we call. Some people really like to draw. Some people really like to write. Some people need to exercise and dance and move. Everybody has a different thing that they like doing to make themselves feel better. So it's really important to understand what helps you and figure out how you can integrate that into your life. That's important for each person to have their own plan.
I would just echo that. So eating healthy is a good thing. It's always a helpful thing. Your sleep is really important. You're trying to have good sleep. It's important, we're human. By nature of human means we're social. Hang out with people, talk with people that care about you. It has a big difference. All those three are high up on the list of things that are quite useful. Exercise also can work.
And surround yourself with people who are positive, who are doing good things, who can uplift you and keep you in a circle of feeling good, feeling great, filled with laughter. Okay, why do people treat people who have mental illness different?
Well, it goes back hundreds and hundreds of years. It goes back to biblical times of treating people who have mental illness differently because they thought this is a possession. And then we go back to medieval times when we don't have medication, and then we go to certain time periods where we think, oh, they're a witch. And all these different things, it's multicultural and it goes back millennia. And it wasn't really until about 50 years ago when they started doing studies on the brain and started doing medication studies where they started realizing of, oh, this is something that happens chemically in the brain. We don't really understand why certain chemicals are produced in certain ways, but we know that we can balance these things out. And then once we started treating these illnesses and people started getting better and people started getting stabilized, we realized that this is incredibly common. It's only when people started talking about how common these things are that we realized that, oh, this is something that a lot of people go through. But the short answer is because we have for hundreds and hundreds of years. It's only recently that we found how common it is and how easy it can be to treat.
I would agree with those things. People, they treat other people differently if they're afraid of them. And we see that with people who are homophobic or people who are racist or sexist. If they're different, we treat them differently. And that same thought with individuals who have mental illness. But if it is so common, it is all of us. So it's often just people who are unfamiliar. You give people enough knowledge, you can let people communicate and interact with each other, and you start realizing there's no difference between someone who is a vegetarian and someone who's not, someone who's tall or someone who's black or someone who is brown or someone who's gay or someone who's mental illness.
And I think we've kind of looked at it from the negative side or from the bad side of things, but there are people who have mental illness who are some of the most brilliant minds in the world. They're creative, they're artists, they're musicians, and these are people who are changing the world by the things that they do. So not all mental illness is considered bad. It isn't bad. It's something that can be worked through, something that can be treated.
And I just add to, and I'm just highlighting the word bad. A mental illness is not bad. It's a difficult condition to manage. If you have cancer, you're not a bad person. You didn't ask for it. You got it because it's a biological illness. Most of these disorders are biological. So treat individuals with one condition like cancer the same as you would treat somebody with mental illness. With the same respect and concern.
Absolutely.
What would you say, what would you do if someone close to you had a mental illness? People close to me do have mental illnesses because I know more than one person. I find that everybody I ever have met and ever will meet is smarter and nicer than I am. I treat them that way.
I like that. Someone close to me, yeah, of course. A lot of people that are close to me have mental illness. My mom has a mental illness. A lot of close friends and family members do. I treat everybody the same. And it allows me to have perspective, especially in the work that I've done. And just like with anybody else, if somebody in my life had diabetes, I would make sure that they had good healthy snacks. If somebody in my life had allergies, we wouldn't hang out outside all the time. If somebody in my life has a mental illness, I'm going to check in with them and make sure they're doing okay. It's just about having good, positive relationships and treating people well.
I would agree.
All right.
And my question has already been answered. What are the most common mental illnesses that are found in kids? So we're going to move on to the next question.
Okay, and this is the last one. All right. Is it hard working with people that have mental health or stuff that have to do with mental health? And thank you for taking your time to talk with us. You're very welcome. To me, no, I love it. I love working with people with different ideas and things of that nature. It was always really interesting and exciting, and it really opened up my perspective to different walks of life and different ways of thinking. So I don't think it's any harder than working at any other job. And I do think that at any point, any one of us is going to be working with somebody who might have some kind of mental health difficulty.
I concur.
no more, no less than anyone else. So, like to say is, I don't know. Some of my colleagues are odd. No. People are all the same.
Yeah.
They generally want to have good lives, do good things in this world, have families, give back. There's no difference.